Okay, so we're going to get started today with exercise 229, which is creating plans from Rhino. We did elevations last class. We're going to do plans today, and then we'll do a section on Monday. I'd like to amend your assignment 205, your final assignment. On that, I say that you need a plan and a section as in addition to your 4 renderings for your final. You may choose 2 of 3, elevation, plan, or section. So pick 2 of those 3. Does that make sense? So if you didn't like one of them, you could throw it out. But I'm okay with substituting the elevation for the plan or the section if you'd rather do that. So I do have under Assembly 10.7 the tutorial. So if you go to Tutorials, you go to Assemblies, and you go to 10.7, I have everything that I'm going to do today in terms of walking you through creating this. So it exists, and you'll be able to use that, and you'll be able to follow along going back in time should you want to. I'm going to go ahead and do it all live, though, but I wanted to point that out before I got going so that you can go back and reference that. Occasionally, when I have something written out like that, I might do it when I'm doing it live. I might do one step out of order. That just is the nature of when I'm working. Sometimes I do things slightly out of order. So be aware that that can happen. So I've gone ahead and I've opened back up that original daytime site file that I keep doing my renderings on. But before I create the plan, I want to do a save as of this file because I will cause damage to this file. I'm going to break stuff when I do it. So it's always important to make sure when you do these plans that we do a save as. I'm going to save it today into today's folder, 229. And I'm going to call this file the plan. Right. And I'll go ahead and save it. Okay, so now when I create a plan view, we cut our plan view at 4 feet above the floor so that we cut through all of the windows. We cut through the doors, obviously, but we're cutting above where the kitchen counters would be, so we're seeing down and seeing kitchen counters. If you had a furniture plan, we'd see the furniture in the plan, that sort of thing. So when I make my cut today, I have to think about where do I want to cut through my building, at what floor do I want to cut through my building, what's appropriate. And so just like when we did the section views, I'm going to create, and actually I'm going to turn off the water that's out here. And let me see what layer it's on. There's a mistake there. I need a layer for the ocean. And then we change the object because it's just bigger than I need to include as all part of this. So we'll go ahead and turn that off. And then I'm going to work in the top view to create a large rectangular plane bigger than everything in my drawing. So we'll do a corner-to-corner rectangular plane. There it is. And I'm going to adjust this so that it is at a particular level that would be 4 feet above whatever floor that I want to cut through. And I'm going to choose to cut through my second story because it will cut through this back room and this room at once. If I were cutting through at 4 feet above the first story, I wouldn't get anything of that back room. So because I'm only doing one plan, I think that one's going to be the better option. So let me go ahead and I'll move from one corner back over here. Let's move it in so that it's level with my floor. So my floor is right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and move this. There it is at the level of my floor. I'm going to move it up by 4 feet. There it is. And we can see as it's cutting through that, yes, in fact, it's going to cut through nicely so that I can see both this floor and this room that's at a lower floor. So that'll work nicely. I'm going to go ahead, now that I've moved it, I will also move it so that it's, once again, going through everything in my scene. And then I'm going to create a layer. It doesn't need to be a sub-layer. Let's get that out here. And we're going to call this layer floor plan. And as a sub-layer to floor plan, I'll call floor plan plane. And I'm going to move this large object onto that floor plan plane layer. So I'm going to change object layer. So now that I have that giant plane existing, I'm going to use that very much in the way that I cut the section before. Right? It's my guide for this. So I'm going to use the plugins that I've been using, the section tools, and I'm going to do a create of my section tools. Select objects to section. It's going to be everything except for that big plane. So I'll go ahead and select it here in the top view and hit enter. And when I get to my x and my y axis, right, before we were working the perspective view, so we were paying attention to, oh, it's going to be the x-axis, or it's going to be the y-axis, or I'm going to pick an axis. In this case, I want it to be the x-axis, but I'm going to create the section in the front view. And so we can see here that it's the x-axis and the z-axis. So I'm going to work in the x-axis. That's good. We're going to make sure solid mode is set to surfaces. So I'll go ahead and hit enter. And when I'm in the front view, you see that now my section is pointing down rather than pointing to the side. See there, it would be pointing to the side. Here it's pointing down. Right? I can snap to my plane right there. And it's going to create ST00 when I hit enter. So I'll go ahead and hit enter. And it will create that section cut for me, ST00. I'm going to move that onto the floor plan layer so that I can keep these organized. Okay? So now I can turn off that big plane there. So that's off. Oops. And in, say, this, let me go into just the perspective view here. Okay? In the perspective view, I can type ST-view or go up to my section tools and then view sections right there. And I'm going to list it, and I'm going to choose ST00. And it's what view do I want to see this in? Right now we'll look at it in the perspective view. So I'll type perspective. And now we can see that I've cut through my building there. Looks like I actually missed and didn't quite cut through the top roof of that building. So I have a ceiling. So I'm going to do this one more time, and I'm going to lower it so that I can actually cut through that because I want to see into my building. So let me take a couple steps back here. Let me go forward again. Sorry, I went too far back. All right, so that floor plan layer is still there. ST00 is locked. Let's go ahead and get rid of ST00. All right, so now I'm going to come back to this view, look at my plan a little bit more carefully. Yeah, I didn't quite make it small enough. So we'll go just a little bit below that ceiling. That was my fault. All right, so much for even dimensions. OK, so now that that's there, we're going to do the ST create again. Doesn't hurt you guys to see me do it once again. So I'll go up to section tools, create. Once again, I want it to be x-axis. Solid mode is set to surfaces. I'll hit enter. And I want to start this process again in the side view, except that I forgot to select my object. So let me do that one more time. Section tools, create, select objects, all of those, enter. X-axis, solid mode is surfaces. And we're going to come in here and snap again to that line. And it's going to be ST01 this time. Okay? So now we can turn off the floor plan, or the floor plan plane again. And in the perspective view, I can type ST-view. And we're going to look this time at ST01 in the perspective view. And now we can see down into my building, which is exactly what I was after. Okay, so we can see the floor plan, we can see the stairs and how they work together, and obviously we can see what's going on outside. I probably need to turn off all of these meshes. So let me go ahead and SEL mesh, and let's add a sublayer for grass. And let me change the object. I'm not going to make that part of the make 2D because it's just going to cloud things up and not really help. Right? Likewise, these rocks, let me make a new sublayer here for rocks. And we can change them onto this layer and turn them off as well. Okay, so now I can look at this, and I need to fill in my walls. It doesn't look like it filled them in for me. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my floor plan layer. I'm going to create a sublayer for wall fill. All right, we'll make that active, and then I'm going to quickly go through and create the fills that I need. Do this from there to there. And we'll do a surface from 3 or 4 corner points to fill this little piece in there. And this is one of the advantages of using the ST view, is that we can see what our section is going to look like. Go across there. We do a surface from 4 corner points there because it's sloping. There, those all look good. Now we need to fill these in. All right, so now all of those are filled in for me, and they're all part of that layer, which is exactly what I was after. Okay, and so we can see that the floor plan looks about what I want it to look like. Now notice that it also clipped off this upper part of the terrain there as well. Okay, that's the nature of doing this, is I lost that upper part of the terrain. So I'm going to ST clear all views so that I get everything back again. And I want to go through and I want to contour this surface. And because this is a brand new file, I have to do the contours again. So let me go to Floor Plan, a new sublayer, and we'll call this Contours. And I'm going to go ahead and contour, just as I did last class, at 2-foot intervals. So we'll do Contour. Base point will be down here. We want it to be going in the Z direction, so we want to be going straight up. And we'll say this is 2 feet. But before I do that, I want to make my contours layer active. Almost forgot. So we'll say 2 feet, and we'll let it draw. And so this is going to take a little bit to finish, but this is going to be helpful when we ultimately are creating the plan, because we'll have the contours that match up with the plan. All right, so it just finished that. Perfect. And if we were to look at it in the top view, we can see all of those nice contours. We'll use those as part of our drawing a little bit later on. So now at this point, I'm going to be working in the top view primarily to create my Make 2D. So let's make the top view a little bit larger here. And when I'm in the top view, I want to kind of center my drawing nicely. This is the same thing that we did before. And then I'm going to save this view so I can come back to it. So let me go to my Set View, Named Views, and we'll save this as my Floor Plan 01. Actually, let's call it 02 because it's the second floor. And we'll say, OK, now I have this so that I can come back to it later on. Okay? So let's also ST View sections. And we're going to view ST01 in the top view. Oops. Sorry, in Floor Plan 02. I made a mistake. When I name the view, don't put any spaces in it because you won't be able to select it. So Floor Plan 02, we'll save that one more time. There it is. And now we'll do ST View sections of ST01 in the top, floor plan 02 layer. There it is. So now we're seeing this as part of it, as part of this view. Okay? So let me go ahead and jump out of the floor plan view and back into my perspective view. Okay? And I've basically got everything set. Let me zoom selected on this. Sorry, on my block here. I basically got everything set except for that viewport rectangle from the top view. Remember we did that so we knew what the boundaries of my top view was? So I'm going to go back to my floor plan. I'm going to say set camera, show camera. And then I'll go back into the perspective view. And we can see the camera. There it is, way off into space. We're going to come in here a little bit closer. And sometimes it's necessary to hide a few of the objects while we do this. So I just type hide. And now I can draw a nice little rectangle that goes from that point to that point. Then I'm going to scale from that point to, so that it fills up my whole view. It has to do with the fact that I minimized this floor plan instead of maximizing it, I believe. So we should be OK at this point. And let me turn back on. I'm going to click Show so that everything's back on. And now I can do a Make 2D of this particular view. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and Make 2D. Select Objects to Draw, All. That's going to include that rectangle that I just created. And I'll go ahead and press Enter. And I'll get my options. So once again, I'm going to turn off the tangents because I don't need them for this. So let me turn off the tangent edges. I am going to show hidden lines. And I'm not going to maintain source layer. So I'm going to make my life simple. And then I'll go ahead and say OK. And you remember that last time this took a little while. So on the surface, this isn't going to look too different than the things that we've already been doing as part of this drawing, except that this is going to end up being a flat set of lines. So we have to give it a little bit of time. And then we'll have a look at it. OK, so it just finished. And instead of working in the floor plan 2, I'm going to take this front layer and change it to be the top view so that I can look, without disturbing my floor plan 2 layer, at the view that I just created. There it is. Okay? Notice that I'm missing parts of the contours. That's because that clip, I lost those. So I could come back in here, and I could say ST clear all views. Okay? Then I could say Make 2D. But instead of saying all, whoops, 2D, instead of saying all, I'm just going to pick those lines that are after, let me turn this off, right? Those lines that are after what I exported. Does that make sense? Okay, those are the contours that are going up that were clipped before. When I do a Make 2D of just these lines, it'll drop them right on top of the existing one that I already did without all the rest of my building, because I already exported that. So I can go back to my top view, and there they are. It should have, well, obviously I should have exported the rectangle too. Let me back up one more time. So let me Make 2D, and I want all of those, this, and this, without that, and I also want that rectangle. There. And again, I have to be in the floor plan when I do it. We'll go ahead and hit Enter. And now I have that rectangle, so I can use that to align this to this particular view. like that, so I can get the rest of those lines, if that makes sense. So it's just a little bit of extra work on that part. Delete that. Okay, so now that I have these, right, I can select all of the Make 2D. So let me select sublayer objects. And I can move these up here to work on for a second. There they are. And I'm going to trim off anything that's not included in this rectangle. So let me go ahead and trim. Helps if I can type. Trim. That's my cutting object. And we're going to get rid of all these lines. That. And get rid of all those lines. Get rid of all these lines. And then I can go through and get rid of the bigger picture stuff here. Okay, so now I'll take this piece. I'm going to move it to point 0, 0. And then let me zoom selected. There it is. And I'm going to export this just as I did last class. So this is a complete duplicate of what we did, other than I had to do the section cut to be able to see what the plan looked like. Okay? So I'll go ahead and I'll export selected. It's going to be an Adobe Illustrator file. And let me put it into today's folder. And this is plan view 02. And under my options, preserve model scale 48 to 1. Exactly. I'll go ahead and say OK. And then we'll go ahead and save it. And that then exports my line drawings. We'll go into Illustrator in a second. But last class I showed you the line drawing first, and then we came back and did the clay rendering. Since we're in Rhino, I'm going to go ahead and do the clay rendering right now. This is where life gets a little tricky as part of the plan view. So everything thus far is pretty straightforward, almost exactly the same as the elevation view. But when we start to do the rendering, so let me go back to floor plan 02, set view, floor plan 02, there it is. Remember that the V-Ray doesn't recognize the section tools cut. So we have to create this section for us. And so I'm going to go back to my perspective view here, and I'm going to turn back on that floor plan plane, which is right there, and I'm going to use that to split everything in my model. But remember, because these are blocks, I have to go through and I have to explode those blocks, okay, in order for me to be able to split them. So I'm going to type explode first, and I'll select it all again, and I'll explode again. Right? This is the irreversible damage that I talk about. And explode. Yeah, I could. And I believe that now I have everything broken apart into its component pieces. Okay? At that point, I can do a split. Select objects to split. I'm going to say all, except for this surface. Enter. Select cutting objects. It's going to be that surface. And we'll let it run for a little while. Okay, so same thing. It takes time, but I did explode the blocks first. So while this is doing the splitting, I'm going to make sure that I go to the course website, and I'm going to go to the, under Tutorials, V-Ray, Quick Rendering Setups, and I'm going to make sure that I download this last one for the clay rendering. Right, so I have that VisOp file that I can load, which I do already have on the flash drive, but it's there. You guys can download it as well, because I'm going to need that in just a second. Now I'm doing the clay render with the shadows, exactly.
So you just go to V-Ray clay rendering?
Yeah, it's the V-Ray quick rendering setups, and then clay rendering. And you'll download the VisOp file. You have to right-click and say Save Link As or Save Target As, so that it saves as a visopt file. Otherwise, if you click on it, it'll bring a bunch of, it's like an XML file of code, which won't make any sense. Okay, so I just finished the split, and I'm going to look at this in one of my side views. So I'm going to go to Set View, and I'm going to go to right or left. It doesn't really matter, so that I can look at my building here, and I can select everything above the line. And so I could do something as simple as taking all of this that's above the line. Make sure I have it all here. Right, taking everything, and I could simply just hide it. And when I went back to my floor plan 02, let me go to Set View, floor plan 02. Right, let me show this as a shaded version, and let me turn off my floor plan plane. There it is. That's essentially what my view is. I could load in the visopt file. And I could go ahead and I could do the rendering of this particular visopt file. Hold on a second. So if we look at this visopt file, though, right, it shows up as, I know this is a little bit blurry, but notice that it's as if this is kind of like SketchUp, right, where the light is coming through as if the top of the building didn't exist, which, in effect, it doesn't exist right now. Okay. Furthermore, I don't have any shadow being cast on the ground up here. I don't have my whole building. It's not really the most accurate. So instead of doing it like that, which is certainly easier, right, I'm going to come back and I'm going to show for everything. And then I'm going to work in this right view again so that I can select everything. All right. I want to make sure that I have everything that's up above there. And I'm going to apply the see-through material to it. Okay? But, of course, I have to turn off the glass. So I have to come back up here, find my glass, turn that off. So here we are. We want the glass railing off. Turning it off will work too. Glass railing, slender windows, window glass. We'll turn that off. There's another window glass there. And I think that's all of my glass. So I'll go up to my materials. I'm going to use the see-through material. So I'll right-click and say Load Material. And we'll go to my flash drive and load up the see-through material. It's under Special Materials, See-Through. There it is. And I will take the see-through material, and I'm going to apply it to the selection. So it's everything except for the glass. Okay, all of that selected. I'll deselect it, and I'll come back in and look at those things that I turned off. So we'll turn this on, and I'll say Select Objects, and I'll get those pieces of glass. I'll turn this on, and I'll say Select Objects, and I'll get those pieces of glass. I'll come up here to the glass railing, and I'll say Select Objects, and I'll get that glass. Now, obviously, I only care about the glass that's above, right, my section cut or my floor plan. So I'll hold down Control, and I'm going to deselect. That was not what I wanted to do. And I'm going to deselect everything that's below, right, that cut plane. So all of that seems okay. Yeah, it's actually the lower part of that window, I think, needs to be deselected. Well, maybe not. Darn it. Yeah, I think it's exactly at the level. So I have to go through and I have to do this again. It's my fault. Select Objects. Select Objects. All right, so I've got those pieces, and I need to have just a plain transparent material applied to that. Okay, so I'm going to go up to my materials. I'm going to create a new material. Oops, I didn't mean to load. I'm just going to create a new standard material. We'll call this material transparent. Say OK, and I'll change the transparency value to white, which essentially makes it transparent. And then I can apply this transparent material to the selection. So now all of those have the transparency applied to it. Okay? So now if I go and I look at floor plan 02, and I go to set view floor plan 02, so I know it's this exact view, when I go to render this, right, I'm going to end up getting it as though I've cut through my building, right, but the building is casting shadows everywhere. Okay? It's a little bit awkward in a few places because the stuff that is inside the building here, this shadow, is being cast by the wall that's on top of the building. So this shadow isn't going to exist, that shadow isn't going to exist, and this shadow isn't going to exist. But everything outside of the building is accurate. So before I move on and save this, I'm going to up the file size. So let me go into my V-Ray options. Let me go to my output. I'm going to make sure that I get my view aspect exact. And then I'm going to up this, maybe the width of maybe 4,000, something like that. And then we'll go ahead and render again. Again, it renders pretty fast. The channel should already be on because the clay render visopt file has all of the channels already preset. They're there. So I don't have to do it. And I'll go ahead and render this out. You might see a little bit of that glass as part of the building. Sorry, we have to let it finish. Yeah. The what? Fair enough. Okay, so that's done now. I can save all the channels. And again, I'll put those into today's folder. Oops, that was not the correct place. Sometimes your brain just shuts down, right? Mm-hmm. All right. Today's folder, let me save all the channels right here, and we'll call this plan clay. And I'll go ahead and click save. And I'll have that. Now I need to go ahead and jump over into the world of Illustrator, and we're going to start to assemble these pieces together. So I'll start with File and then Open, and I'm going to open up the Illustrator file that I created today, the plan view. And once again, this should look very similar to what we did before. I need to adjust with the artboard, which is the little symbol with the square with the lines on it, to match up with the output. There. and there. I can press Control 0 now to see the whole thing. And then I can drop in the background image. I'm going to create a new layer. That's the what? It's okay, it'll clip. And I'm going to go ahead and place that new image here. And so let's see, there's my clay. I can go ahead and place that in. Remember, it has to match up with the overall size. So we'll use our free transform tool and adjust this size down. Right? Yes, and so we can do a multiply adjustment if we want. I put it underneath everything else. So it's just a matter of preference. So anyway, so now I have that there. I need to make some corrections to this particular piece, and the easiest way of doing that is probably to just draw over and fill in with white where the plan is. So I'm going to create another new layer, and before I do anything, I'm going to lock this. And again, one of the challenges in the world of Illustrator is it's technically not part of this class, but if you took 135, this stuff shouldn't seem too far off. I locked all the layers, and I'm just going to draw using the pen tool around the perimeter of this building. So that I don't have those shadows being cast anymore. Like that. But I have the shadows being cast down on the ground. And then I can go through and I can select each of my line types here. We'll move my visible lines to the very top. I'm going to select all of them and change their line weight. I don't know, maybe 1.5. I'll take my hidden lines, and we'll select all of those. And I'm going to go to my line types. We'll make them 0.5, and we'll do them as a dashed line. I'm going to do them a little finer than last time. We'll do 2 point and 1 point. And I'm going to change their color to be kind of a medium gray. Like that, so we should see them now. There they all are. They might end up being too dark. We'll have to play around with it. But the point is that now I have a nice plan that's been derived from my Rhino file. Right? So I took it all the way through to get this end result. Okay, so I know that there's a lot to it. I can keep pushing this. I could add some background texture and whatever, which I did a little bit of last time. But I want you guys to have some time to work. I know you're all tired of having me talk for hours at a time. And you just would rather work, but I do have to impart this wisdom on you before you leave this class, so we have to do plans, and then next class we'll have to do sections, but I promise I'll give you as much time as possible to work. I am very, very close to having grade sheets for everybody. I just have to go through and check off about half the people's exercises, and as soon as I'm done with that, probably take me about 30 minutes, I'll print them and give you all grade sheets so you know where you are. Generally speaking, people are behind in their postings. You're missing some of your exercises. Just make sure you go back and have those posts done so that I can give you credit for them. All right, any questions? No? All right. We did sections, but not line drawing sections.
Yeah. We didn't